Hello and welcome back to Dawnshard. I hope you watched the non-spoiler video, but if you didn't, that's okay. You're here for the spoiler talk, which is always the fun part. I'm going to go ahead and talk spoilers throughout this video. I would say just general Cosmere spoilers throughout the video. I make a few references to Mistborn Era 2 and Secret History, I believe, as well. Don't quote me on it, though. So if you haven't read those two, I would go ahead and brush up on them a little bit. Definitely Stormlight Archive spoilers. I do warn you before the Bands of Mourning spoilers, though, so if you want to skip that, you can. Enjoy the rest of the video. Oof, let's start with the easy. Let's start with the familiar part. Let's start with the Lopen and Huio. So, what I liked about the Lopen and the Huio's relationship, specifically about how the diversity they gave to the third ideal. Like, it's Brandon Sanderson is completely just saying, hi, you know, these are not entirely set in stone. Like, first we had Kaladin of, I will protect those even if I hate people, like, I will protect even those that I hate. Then you have Teft. I will protect those that I hate even if I hate myself. Even if the one I hate is myself. And then you have Huio, which we didn't actually hear his ideal, but we can assume it's somewhere along the lines of, I will protect even those that hurt me. And then the Lopens, who this is a paraphrase of his ideal, but essentially this is what it boils down to. I will protect others from myself. Tell me in the comments if you thought it was different, if you thought that like it boiled down to something different. But the Lopen realized like, yo, my jokes hurt people. I hurt people with my words, and I have to protect them from myself. Also, Shardhammer, middle of battle, classic. Just, I'm going to say the ideal and slap this dude. That was really cool to see. The Windrunners are the primary order that we've seen a lot of the ideals from. I really hope that in the future, Sanderson further fleshes out other ideals like this. I kind of doubt it will happen. I think the Windrunners will probably be the most fleshed out order that we get. I personally would like to see more of the Elsecaller ideas because that's usually what I test into. I usually test into Windrunners, Elsecallers, or what's Venli's? Will Shaper. So I usually test into one of those three. Usually it's consistently either Elsecaller and Windrunner or Elsecaller and Will Shaper. So I just go with Elsecaller because that's the common denominator. Anyways, I want to see more of those, but that's not until book 10, so I got a long way to go, like 30 years or so. We'll see. He's trying to finish everything before he's 70. Okay, what else? Let's talk about Cord and the Horny Peaks. We see more about Cord's character, which I like the development of her character so far. She's primarily driven by, I want to learn to protect my land up in the Horny Peaks, because we have Cultivation's Perpendicularity is up in the Horny Peaks, and the Shadesmar side of it is occupied by Odium's forces. And then we don't really know about the land, the physical realm side. I think by Rhythm of War, the physical realm side will be overrun by the Voidbringers, but that's my personal prediction. Cord knows that that's there. Like, that's why the Hornier people can see Spren, because they're so near to the perpendicularity. They're so near to the cognitive realm, essentially, that they can see Spren, and it goes into their genetics. So basically they're just infused with some weird, I don't know if it's investiture, I don't know. That'd be an interesting question to Brandon, like Brandon Sanderson. Why can they see? Is it a genetic thing? Is it an investiture thing? How does it work? He probably's thought about that. So she's primarily motivated by, I have to protect my people, I have to protect my land, because she realizes what an asset it is to be able to just go in and out of the Shadesmar, even though there's 10 other gates that allow you to do that. Or do they? I need to get back to Cord because I keep going off on tangents. This is what happens in Brandon Sanderson videos with me. I promise it will always happen, and I apologize, but I promise it at the same time. I really like the language barrier. Like with Cord, she had a language barrier. She couldn't talk Alethi very well, but she could speak in the language of Jakaved. Or is it Yakaved? I think it's Yakaved. That actually rolls off the tongue a lot better than Jakaved. Yakaved! Kind of like Yasna. So she could speak in the Yakaved language, and so could Rysn. So that was a really nice point in the book where she's like, oh, by the way, I can speak this language too. And Cord was like, what? Oh, yes, I felt like I've been just, of course, Nickley was trying to put things off on her because she was the outsider, because the Sleepless is a devious son of a gun. I find it also interesting that Cord didn't see the Dawnshard. Like, it didn't draw her eye, didn't, nothing. Which points to me toward that the Dawnshard called to Rysn specifically. And I think I'll get back into that. I'll talk when I get talking about the Dawnshard, I'll talk more about that. Yeah, I probably talked less about Cord than I should. But I'd be very interested in seeing her character develop more throughout the rest of Stormlight. Next, let's talk about the Sleepless. I think the Sleepless are fascinating. First of all, let's just call them Hordlings, because that's what they like to be called. They did not originate on Roshar. I can't remember if that's actually talked about in the book, or that was something I got from one of Brandon Sanderson's annotations. But they're not from Roshar, which is really cool, which means they essentially, I don't know if they followed the Dawnshard, but they came somewhere and they came and eventually became the Guardians, which is really interesting. Like, what was their original purpose? And they're definitely on different worlds, from what I've seen from Sanderson answering comments. I wonder if we're going to see other strains of the Sleepless on other worlds. I think that will be great. I kind of hope Brandon Sanderson is doing another interlude book called The Silence Divide. So The Silence Divine, which, if I remember correctly, takes place on Ashen, which is one of the other planets in the Rosharian system. And I think it's gonna be about the human exodus from Ashen to Roshar. I think that's where he was implementing his magic as disease magic idea that he got around COVID. He started writing it and then he stopped. The mental communication was interesting because it was like 2 steps short of a hive mind. Like, it's like individual hive minds. So you have one Sleepless who is a hive mind of these individual things, and then you have another Sleepless that's a hive mind of these individual Hordlings. And then the different hive minds talk to each other, but they're not aware of they're not in and of themselves all aware. From the impression that I got, there were actually specific Hordlings that were communicating telepathically, because they're all about breeding Hordlings to do things. So that's an interesting question, is if you could identify the individual Hordlings, you could technically cut them off from each other. But at the same time, from what I could tell, Nickley doesn't have to be all in the same place. So all of his Hordlings technically could be scattered throughout Roshar, and he can communicate with the individual Hordlings to do things because they're all the same. But at the same time, the telepathic Hordlings will communicate with the other telepathic Hordlings that are part of other Sleepless. It's so interesting. So just, there's little things and implications, and you get 2 words and you're like, oh, does this mean this? Ooh, I just could go for hours, but I won't keep you here that long, I promise. What did you think of the Sleepless? Do you think that they will... I'll ask a question after we talk about the deal and we talk about the Dawnshard. I really liked the development of Rysn, and specifically, there's two different developments that I really liked leading up to Amiya, but before Amiya. So first off, we have the development of her and her coping. I thought it was really insightful for her to be like, okay, I miss being free, so everything I do helps me make more, like every little thing that I can do on my own helps me feel a little bit more free. And then you get to, after Huio destroys the Fabrial and wrecks it, but, finds another way to use it because aluminum, and they get that hover chair. That was so cool. Like, that was such a really, a great point to show. I think Sanderson hasn't really shown the discoveries of these Fabrials before. He just showed like, oh, by the way, we know how to do this. And here we see a discovery of, oh, we can do this. This is so cool. Like, yeah, we saw the quantum mechanics in the first book, but that wasn't really a discovery of a technology and an application. And we didn't see other than the geek joy of, oh my gosh, this is a thing, cool. we got to see an actual application of a thing of an invention immediately, which was really cool. I really liked seeing that. And the fact that Huio was an engineer, that was really cool, but he was, blocked by a language barrier. And Sanderson actually based this off of a real life person that he met that was also a brilliant person, but couldn't really work in his field because of the language barrier. And I've met a few things like that. I had a community college professor once, brilliant man, couldn't teach entry level chemistry for the life of him, mostly because he was too brilliant to teach it. Language was his second or third language, so it was hard for him to. It was it was taught in broken English. Really liked the applications of that. The other part about Rysn's development that I liked was her gradually and gaining the respect of the crew. Like, that was such a really nice arc. First of all, Rysn not understanding all the traditions around sailing. And then in the middle, when they're sailing towards Amiya, you reach a midpoint of the arc where she's like, I understand their traditions more, and I'm trying to change those traditions so people, work with those traditions and work with how people are in order to get them to do their job and respect me as their Babsk, I think is how you pronounce it. And that was very interesting. And then finally, at the very end, with the deal and everything, I felt like she finally accepted her role. Starting at the beginning and the middle, she was like feeling it out. She was like, I'm the Babsk, but am I really the Babsk? And what am I to these people? What place do I have with them? I'm just another box that sits on the deck. And then in the middle, she's trying to work with them. She's trying to gradually find her place. And at the very end, she finds her place. She's the trader. She sort of finds it with the wheat with the worms in it, which I always wondered, where did the worms come from? Where did those hordlings just bring the worms on the ship, or were those worms hordlings? So that's a real question, because if the worms are hordlings, they kind of just screwed over those natives that they traded to, because... Anyways, so she sort of started getting into I can be an asset to the crew, an asset to the ship, because I can trade. But it was at the very end when she saved their lives, and the hordling, the Sleepless, told the sailors that she saved their lives, that she really comes into her own, because she's really like, hey, everybody has something to trade. I'm very interested to see in the future the Easter eggs, hopefully in Rhythm of War and in other ones. I don't know if we're actually going to see many Sleepless like actively around in Rhythm of War, because the spoilers in Rhythm of War for the preview chapters simply have to do with talking about Cord and the Soulcasters. That's it, like brief mentions, which is why you don't have to read Dawnshard before you read Rhythm of War. I don't even know if Rysn is actually going to be in Rhythm of War. I think it'll be interesting if she is, or if she has an interlude, but I don't think it's going to give away very much. She's just going to be working with Sleepless, and some people are going to be like, what? But I thought that deal was very interesting. And I like Rysn's character because her character is all about understanding. And you have to really trade with somebody, you really have to try to understand them. And that's what Rysn's Babsk was trying to teach her, which is really amazing. I could go into a long, interesting talk that I won't now about how our culture should be reaching towards understanding. Let's just say I think tolerance culture doesn't go far enough. We should try to understand everybody, not just tolerate them. And there's a lot that goes into that, but I won't talk that much about it. I really like Rysn's character because of that. I really, resonated on some level with Rysn's character because she was trying to understand and not, oh, these people are trying to kill me, let's kill them back. No, don't fight hate with hate. It's bad. Chiri-Chiri. So, Chiri-Chiri and what he was. He was an ancient guardian. Really nice. I don't know where these guys came from. I want to know where they came from. So, evidently, Ancient Guardians came with the Dawnshard and brought the Dawnshard to Roshar, if I remember correctly. And then they died out, except for Chiri-Chiri. Actually, I don't actually know who brought the Dawnshard to Roshar. I don't know if it was the Ancient Guardians or not. I take that back. I'm going to reread a few sections because there's a scattering of sentences that actually talk about that. Cue editing Pete. So, the Larkins, they absorb straight up investiture. It doesn't matter if it's void light, storm light, cultivation light. I wonder if it'd work on a Mistborn, because probably not, because the way they get their investiture is different. So Mistborn aren't actually infused with investiture. There's no investiture inside of them. The metal acts as a mini gateway, a catalyst for the investiture to flow through them. At least that's my understanding of, how Mistborns work, of how Allomancy works. I don't think she'd be able to actually drain the reserves like it's aluminum. Aluminum is what drains internal reserves. I don't want to... Is there one that wipes external reserves? Yeah. Chromium. Chromium is the other one. So chromium wipes external allomantic reserves of target, and then aluminum is internal reserves. So it doesn't... I don't know if if Chiri-Chiri would act like aluminum or actually specifically chromium. I don't know. I don't think it would work that way because of my impression of how allomancy works. But I wonder if he would screw up with Furukami. But yeah, so Chiri-Chiri's just mechanics actually cause a whole slew of interesting things, even though those have been talked about since Oathbringer, because he exhibits them in she I don't remember which, because Chiri-Chiri exhibits them in Oathbringer. Also, Chiri-Chiri's gonna be a friggin' dragon. Holy crap, this is gonna be great. Really, Rysn is gonna have a really easy time putting a chair on top of Chiri-Chiri, because there's gonna be plenty of places to put it. But are we gonna get dragon riders on Roshar? That would be really cool. I mean, dragon rider. I will say that the bigger Chiri-Chiri gets, the harder it's going to be to hide the Dawnshard. More questions will be asked about Chiri-Chiri, and thus it'll be harder to hide. The Sleepless can hide. They're getting better and better. I mean, Nickley could hide as one of the southern Bands of Mourning, spoilers thing here. Nickley could hide as one of the masked people from southern Scadrial. That's it. That's a spoiler. We'll see. I don't think we've had any cultures that have had a massive amount of tattoos. So that honestly was one of the first things that threw me off with Nickley. So let's talk about the big, juicy elephant in the title, Dawnshard. So what's a Dawnshard? A Dawnshard is a command. What is a command? A command is something that people use. It's a weapon, but not like a stabby weapon. It's like a let's reshape the universe weapon, which is really interesting. So specifically at some point in the book, when Rysn encounters the Dawnshard, or Nickley is explaining what a Dawnshard is, he talks about command and intent with a capital C and a capital I. So, what is a command? Command is a Dawnshard. What is the intent with a capital I? A shard. So, honor, cultivation, odium, those are intent. So, in order to use a Dawnshard, you must have command, the Dawnshard itself, and intent, investiture. That is why Rysn can never be invested, because if she has invested investiture, then she can use the Dawnshard to cataclysmic things. This is kind of one of the annotations that Brandon pointed out, is a very interesting thing. He said that an oathed invested individual, which it would be a Knight's Radiant, would wreak havoc with a Dawnshard. Even more so if, I think, what was the words he used? I think it was it wasn't unkeyed, because that's Mistborn. Like an unoathed or basically an unbonded radiant or something, and an unbonded surge binder. That's the term he used. So if an unbonded surge binder with a radiant is infinitely more destructive than a bonded surge binder, which is interesting. So what is an unbonded surge binder? Hypothesis, the fuse. The fuse are in unbonded surge binders, specifically odium surge binding. So odium and honor both have surge binders. Odiums, they only have one type of surge binding. And if we look at nope, that's spoilers for Rhythm of War. Come back later. Can't do that. Anyways, I think unbonded surge binding is odium surge binding because you don't have any. It's complicated. I also think this is the interesting thing. Did odium have the Dawnshard? Because I think the Dawnshard came from a Shin. Because it came up through the Horn-Eater pool, which is how the humans might have come. Which is the interesting part. But it came up through the odium. Oh wait, so the Horn-Eaters have memories of the Dawnshard coming through the pool. They have tales of the Dawnshard coming through the pool per cord, which means the Dawnshard came through the pool after humans arrived on Roshar. Well after the humans arrived on Roshar. So it was somewhere else and it was brought there by unnamed people. That's the next mystery to figure out. Where was the Dawnshard? What are the Dawnshards? Where are all the Dawnshards? There's some people that theorize that the different Dawnshard commands we have Change, which is the one that was confirmed in Dawnshard. Some other people think Unite is another one because Dalinar used it. I think Unite is probably more. I think it's entirely possible that Dalinar is on his way to recovering the slivers of honor, and he's going to be change the intent to the intent of unity over honor. I'm not sure if Brandon has talked about how if the intent can be changed or even slightly altered. It's entirely possible. I do not think there's any more Dawnshards on Roshar. I could be wrong, but I really don't think so. There's a lot of people that talk about having cross-counter Dawnshards. You have Change, you have some sort of stasis or permanence or apathy Dawnshard. And then the other two would be counterculture as well. Were they created by Adonasium? I think that's how you pronounce it. Adonasium. Adonalzium. So many weird words. Thanks, fantasy. I'm not sure if Adonasium actually created the Dawnshards, but he used them, and then eventually they were used to split Adonasium into 16 pieces, into the 16 intents, which is very interesting because you have the 16 people, and then you have the 16 different vessels. You have Ray's, that's Odium, and all the other people. Then you also have Hoid, who is also their friend. And what do we know about Hoid and Dawnshards and honor and being one of the shards? So we know from Brandon that Hoid was offered one of the shards. He was offered to become one of them. He said no. 2, from the annotations on Dawnshard, he actually confirmed that Hoid was at one point a Dawnshard, and his immortality and his inability to actually kill people is a result of him, because the Dawnshard was a part of him, what he was a Dawnshard at one point, that's why he's immortal and he can't eat meat. Magically vegetarian! Yay! That's interesting. That'd be a huge change. It's worse than being made mad by magic, aka heralds. I say worse by meaning, let me say that again. Magically, I'm not saying vegetarians are bad. I'm saying having your diet changed by magic would be bad. Because, like, what if all of a sudden I couldn't eat candy because magic told me no? That would suck. Because I have a sweet tooth. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Hoy just gets better and better. More interesting and more interesting. Like, what is his motivation? Well, obviously we know his motivation right now. I say obviously, but I probably shouldn't. He's trying to do something counter to old Odium, because in the epitaphs to Way of Kings, one of them was a letter from Hoid to one of his other friends, or no, it was from him to Hoid, one of his friends to Hoid. Basically sent a letter, and they were like, "We don't think Ray's is that big of a deal. He's kind of quarantined on Roshar, so it's fine." So other shards are not coming to help Ray's mess with Odium, and I say mess with. I think he really, besides the whole I know where I have to be stuff, he's trying to oppose Odium and bring Odium down. I don't know what his end goal specifically is, because you can't kill a shard without taking it up, I guess. He might be trying to splinter it somewhere for him, which is why he's kind of egging Dalinar's coalition on. But, he doesn't like Odium, because him and Rayse is the R-A-Y-S-E, the original dude that picked it up. And so those two didn't get along very well. I don't remember where I heard that from. It'd be interesting to see his and Yasna's relationship develop, because at the end of Words of Radiance, they know each other, and I wonder if that's gonna, get explored a little bit more, like friendship or whatever. There's a lot of implications here. I really want to know where the other Dawnshards are. I'm going to be on the lookout for others, and I'm really interested in talking with other people, like on Reddit, 17 Shard, whatever. What do you think the other Dawnshards are? We have change. What are the other three? Because there are three. Also, what are your thoughts on the theory that 4 of each of the shards are connected to one Dawnshard? Tell me your ideas. Tell me all the things that you think about Dawnshard, the book. I thought this was a really exciting book. It compressed so many things in those last few pages that have such huge implications. And then I really like reading Brandon Sanderson's annotations on Reddit as well. I really like those with the preview chapters as well. Go check them out. They really add another level of depth to the book and the books that he writes. So yeah, tell me what you think about Dawnshard. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a like. Give me a subscribe if you want to see more. I'm definitely going to be doing a lot more Brandon Sanderson content. At some point, I'm going to be doing a live show December 4th. I say at some point, but I actually know when it's going to be. December 4th, I think we were going for 8:30. Stay tuned for more info on that in future videos. I'm doing it over on Megan's Reading Revelations. It's me and 3 other booktubers are hosting. It's kind of a co-host for a buddy read of Rhythm of War. Check it out. Let me know what you think about Dawnshard, about Brandon Sanderson. Do you love him? Do you hate his guts for some reason? I'm down to discuss anything.